Welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, and as we begin today's broadcast, we're streaming live from Houston, Texas. The last of the five-part series of today's lesson will deal with managing family stressors. On Monday, we talked about stress, just a working definition. On Tuesday, detecting family stress. On Wednesday, the types of family stressors. On Thursday, the impact of family stressors. And today we will finalize the series by simply talking about some how to manage stress. According to Mayo Clinic, there are 5 primary stressors in order to talk about how to manage stress. So when we talk about those 5 primary stressors, it becomes important to know what those 5 primary stressors are in order to adequately talk about stress. And in order to adequately talk about stress, it's first important to understand where those stressors originate. Let's give you a brief overview of those 5 target areas. First, in the work setting. According to the Holmes Race Stress Indicator, getting fired from a job is the 8th most stressful event one will ever experience according to this Holmes Race Stress Indicator. When you look at relationships, divorce, according to the Holmes Race Stress Indicator, is ranked as the 2nd worst stressor ever experienced by an individual because you're separated, you're disconnecting from hope, and you're disconnecting from what you dreamed always would be a forever relationship. Third, any life change. Death of a spouse is a major life change. And according to the Holmes Race Stress Indicator, it's the first most stressful event that a person will ever experience in their life. When we talk about birth, life is good. But when we talk about death, whether it was a good life of the individual, a mediocre life, or even a bad life, death creates stress because then you've got to reacclimate to life as you wished it would be. You've got to reacclimate to life as it is now without the individual in your life. So according to the Holmes Race Stress Indicator, managing death, managing that major life change is very difficult. Number 4 is environmental changes. Let's talk about noise and let's talk about light. In military and interrogation settings, the deprivation of light is used as a technique to get people to talk. And then to get people agitated and almost to get them to talk or to abandon an area is noise. People will use noise around airports in order to make birds scatter. So when we look at environmental changes that are too extreme, noise and light, those are stressors in individuals' life. And then 5th, there are self-generated stressors. One's own inner thinking that is mostly not realistic, if they're too perfectionistic, or if they're too pessimistic, or if they are very negative in their thinking. These create internal stresses that are of a person's own doing. Let's talk about what do you do about those 5 primary stressors. We've looked at work, we've looked at relationships, we've looked at life changes, we've looked at environmental stressors, and we've talked about self-generated stressors. Now, what do you do with those? Number 1, learn to value healthy relationships and connect to something. Connect to a wholesome church. Connect to wholesome social groups. Connect to a wholesome family, even if your family may not be as wholesome as it should. Maybe connect with a 3rd, a 4th, or a 5th cousin. Get fictitious kinsmen, and those are kin people that we pretend are our relatives. Connect to a healthy family because it will really help alleviate stress. Next, learn to deal with the stressors instead of ignoring or running from them. Acknowledge that these stressors are real and acknowledge that I've got to do something to move away from the stress that's taking place in my life. Next, empower yourself to recharge yourself. We call that simply learn to relax. There's nothing wrong with taking a break every now and then. In some countries, it's mandatory. Every afternoon, people must take a break. Next, learn to manage giving with receiving. Some people are just givers, 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 givers. They bless people, they bless people, they bless people, and they bless people, but they have trouble accepting or receiving from other people. Allow yourself to become a receiver as well as your natural tendency to give. Also, learn to respect boundaries. There are boundaries that you must learn to respect coming from other people, but there are also boundaries that people must learn to respect that are your boundaries. And feel okay using a two-letter word, and that is no. No, it is not okay for you to speak to me that way. No, it is not okay for you to take this away from me without my permission. No, it is not acceptable that you talk that way to me. Learn to say no. Next, begin to think optimistically. If it's cloudy today, it may be cloudy tomorrow. It may be cloudy for 3 days, but what you know for sure is that somewhere the clouds are going to dissipate and the sun is going to shine again. So learn, in terms of managing stress, to learn to be optimistic. Next, practice forgiveness. Forgiveness is not for the person who's wronged you. Forgiveness is your empowerment tool to move forward with life. So in order for you to move forward and to move stress away from your life, let the other person and their behaviors go. Forgiveness is simply releasing. And the person who has the ability to release is the person who's really in control of his or her emotions. Next, do not sweat the small stuff. Here's why. Small stuff has been happening ever since this world has been, and even in the midst of your best day, some small infractions are going to take place, and learn not to allow yourself, learn not to permit yourself to get stressed over the insignificant things of a day. You can't stop a traffic jam. That's beyond your control. Your attitude must rise above the stressors, and only you can move yourself beyond those stressors. In the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 17, beginning at verse number 28, there's a story about a man named David that had stress all through his life. He had stress from his brothers. He had stress of looking for his brothers. He had stress from Saul the king. But he would never allow those stressors to control and to regulate his thinking. Listen at what David would say to his brothers in terms of how they would attempt to stress him out. What have I done now? Is there not a cause? In other words, you're fussing, but there's a situation going on with a giant named Goliath. So am I going to focus on you, my brothers, or will I focus on eliminating the giant, which is really the stressor in our lives? Learn to prioritize the stressors. There are some stresses that can wait, and there are some stressors that you just need to deal with. David understood, my brothers have been stressing me out all my life, and they'll probably keep stressing me out after the situation with the giant. So he prioritized. He addressed the giant first, and then if his brothers wanted to continue down that road of stress, David said, well be. I'll see you back in class again next time. Don't be late, and don't skip class.
Sorry. They're like, who's crying in the background? The stress of a little kid crying.